Imagine you are walking the chalky, rugged landscape of the Hell Creek Formation 66 million years ago, but you aren't looking for a living dinosaur. You are looking for evidence. You are a forensic investigator, and the biggest, scariest creature to ever walk this planet, Tyrannosaurus rex, is not just an absolute unit of muscle and teeth. It is a detailed, preserved crime scene, waiting for us to read the police report etched into its bones. For decades, the T-Rex has been simplified into the ultimate dino-normie villain. Big teeth, loud roar, eats everything. That narrative is tired. The truth is infinitely more complex, terrifying, and bizarre. We aren't here today to talk about how strong T-Rex was. We are here to talk about what its injuries, its bite marks, and its very existence tell us about life and death in the late Cretaceous. We are going to look beyond the mythology and into the pathologies, using fossil records as courtroom exhibits. Welcome to the Lost World. Grab your magnifying glass because we are dusting for 66 million-year-old prints. The thesis, the late Cretaceous forensic file. To properly understand the investigation, we must set the stage. We are deep in the Maastrichtian Age, the final moments of the Cretaceous period. This wasn't the scorched earth of a spaghetti western. This was a humid, subtropical, marshy coastal plain environment. Think Florida, but the humidity is weaponized and everything that breathes could crush a Honda Civic. T-Rex dominates this environment, specifically across what is now North America, primarily the Hell Creek Formation stretching across Montana, Wyoming, and the Dakotas. This period was brutal, not just because of the looming KPG asteroid impact that was about to hit the cosmic reset button, but because survival day-to-day was a contact sport. T-Rex lived fast, died hard, and left behind evidence so detailed that paleontologists today function less like natural historians and more like cold case detectives, analyzing bone fragments and healed fractures as if they were reading coded messages. Our investigation begins naturally with the murder weapon, the T-Rex jaw. When we talk about the power of T-Rex, the numbers are often just thrown around. 800 pounds per square inch, PSI. That's not just strong, that is nightmare fuel strong. To put that into perspective for our dino-normie friends, a modern lion generates maybe 650 PSI. A saltwater crocodile, the current bite champion, hits around 3,700 PSI. T-Rex was generating a force capable of crushing a small car, not just breaking bones but pulverizing them, a process called osteophagy. But the sheer force is less interesting to the detective than the resulting damage pattern, the signature. Researchers from the University of Liverpool, using sophisticated techniques like finite element analysis, FEA, basically advanced computer simulations that test how much stress a structure can handle, confirmed this extreme power. But what they really found was that the T-Rex tooth wasn't just designed to puncture, it was designed to maximize bone failure. Each tooth, up to 12 inches long, was serrated like a steak knife, but thicker and more robust than the teeth of its earlier ancestors. They weren't optimized for slicing flesh like an Allosaurus. They were optimized for puncturing through bone and holding on. This bone-crushing ability is what creates the unique forensic evidence paleontologists look for. Consider the classic discovery, a fossilized Triceratops sacrum, the central part of the pelvis. This piece of bone, found in the Judith River Formation, didn't just have teeth marks. It had deep gouges, some of which penetrated completely through the thick bone. More importantly, some of these gouges show evidence of healing. What does a healed Triceratops hip tell us? It tells us the Triceratops survived the initial attack. The depth and spacing of the punctures allow paleontologists to perfectly size up the attacker's dentition. It matches the signature of a large, subadult T-Rex. This wasn't a scavenger finding roadkill. This was a successful, though not fatal, attempt at predation. This bone is Exhibit A in the T-Rex was a hunter case file. The trauma shows the incredible violence of the interaction. The T-Rex clamped down. The Triceratops likely thrashed violently, tearing the skin and muscle, but failed to break the bone entirely, allowing the prey to escape and live to fight, or at least limp, another day. Another stunning piece of evidence comes from an Edmontosaurus specimen discovered in South Dakota. This duck-billed dinosaur had several of its tail vertebrae fused together due to massive trauma. Embedded right in the middle of this healed injury A T-Rex tooth tip, broken off during the initial violent struggle and encapsulated by 66 million years of bone regrowth. The tooth was literally swallowed by the healing tissue. This tiny fragmented tooth is the smoking gun. It proves T-Rex engaged in active predation against large, healthy prey. If T-Rex were merely a scavenger of already dead carcasses, why would its teeth be lodged in the aggressively healing tail of an absolute unit of a herbivore? This tale tells us a story of a chase, an attack, and a very lucky escape artist who managed to shake off the king, but paid the price of a permanent limp. These bite marks, studied meticulously under CT scans, are the T-Rex's specific, terrifying signature, confirming its role as the dominant physical force in its ecosystem. If the bite marks on prey are the record of the hunt, then the scars on the T-Rex itself are the record of its brutal life among its own kind. Look closely at the fossil skull of Stan, BHI 3033, one of the most complete and studied T-Rex specimens. Stan's face looks like a badly preserved bar brawler's mugshot. It is crisscrossed with deep, linear healed gouges, particularly along the jawline and the snout. These are not superficial scratches from falling onto rocks. These are deep gashes exactly matching the shape and spacing of another T-Rex's teeth. This is Exhibit B, evidence of extreme intraspecific aggression or dinosaur-on-dinosaur violence. Why the face? In many modern predators, especially crocodiles and sharks, facial biting is often linked to territorial disputes or dominance displays during mating season. For the T-Rex, a creature with laughably tiny short king arms that were useless for grappling or defense, the primary weapons were the head and the jaw. You attack with what you have. If you are squaring off against a rival T-Rex, estimated to weigh up to 9 metric tons, the weight of 3 full-grown African elephants, you are going for the most vulnerable, yet defensible, target, the head. A 2012 study by researchers focusing on the pathology of T-Rex specimens concluded that these face-biting scars were almost certainly the result of ritualized combat. The goal wasn't necessarily to kill, but to assert dominance. Imagine 2 T-Rex absolute units slamming their heads together, jaws locked, testing the limits of their bone density. It's a terrifying high-stakes game of push and shove where the loser ends up permanently disfigured. But the scars don't stop at external damage. Many T-Rex specimens, including the famous Sioux, FMNHPR 2081, show evidence of severe, deep trauma that led to chronic infection. Sioux, in particular, suffered a broken fibula, lower leg bone, fused tail vertebrae, and fractured ribs. These injuries weren't just painful, they were life-altering. The breaks in the leg and ribs are classic injuries sustained during intense physical activity, perhaps a fall during a high-speed chase, or a brutal takedown gone wrong. The fact that the injuries healed, often with severe calcification and deformation, tells us Sue survived these catastrophic events, but lived the rest of her life in chronic pain. This provides crucial insight into T-Rex behavior and physiology. Resilience. Despite massive injuries that would kill most modern animals through shock or systemic infection, T-Rex was tough enough, or perhaps benefited from a superior immune system, to overcome and heal. This suggests a powerful healing response necessary for a high-risk lifestyle. But perhaps the most chilling pathological evidence doesn't come from teeth or fractures, but from a parasite. Sue also displayed unusual, smooth-edged lesions on her lower jaw, particularly the quadrate bones. For years, paleontologists were baffled. Then, researchers compared these lesions to those found in modern birds of prey. The diagnosis? Trichomoniasis. Trichomoniasis is a parasitic infection caused by a protozoan, often spread through saliva, or, crucially, through aggressive kissing, or, in the case of dinosaurs, head-to-head fighting and biting. In modern birds, especially pigeons and falcons, this parasite creates throat lesions that eventually prevent the animal from swallowing, leading to starvation and death. The presence of these lesions in Sue and other large tyrannosaurs suggests that not only did they fight each other violently, but they potentially passed deadly, highly contagious diseases directly through their deep, face-biting combat rituals. Imagine surviving a brutal fight only to contract a slow, agonizing death sentence from the microbial ecosystem of your rival's mouth. That is the definition of nightmare fuel, and it further paints Rex society is one of constant, aggressive, and sometimes lethal contact. For over a century, the question that has divided the paleontology community, fueled countless documentaries, and obsessed every dino normie is simple. Was T-Rex a majestic hunter or a glorified, gigantic vulture waiting for roadkill? The fossil evidence, when examined forensically, tells a complicated story that incorporates elements of both, but fundamentally leans toward apex opportunist. The case for the scavenger was popularized in the 1990s and rests on several key pieces of circumstantial evidence. First, the arms, the infamous short king arms. They are comically small, barely 2 feet long. Detractors argued that such tiny appendages couldn't possibly be used to grasp or subdue struggling prey the size of a school bus. They were useless for lifting oneself after a fall, or for initiating the grapple. Therefore, T-Rex must have avoided violent confrontation with living prey, relying instead on finding carcasses. Second, speed and bulk. T-Rex was an absolute unit. Estimates suggest that due to its mass, up to 9 tons, and biomechanics, its top speed was likely limited to around 15 to 25 mph. While fast enough to catch an aging Edmontosaurus, it was too slow to be an agile, persistent pursuer like a cheetah. A fall at that speed would have been catastrophic, likely breaking femurs and ribs, the kind of injuries we discussed Sue suffering. For an animal that large, injury meant potential starvation. The high risk of chasing prey might push it towards scavenging. Third, sensory ecology. Scavenger proponents argued that T-Rex had huge olfactory bulbs, the part of the brain responsible for smell, suggesting an incredible sense of smell, perfect for locating decaying carcasses miles away. Conversely, its eyes were relatively small compared to nocturnal or dedicated visual hunters, leading some to initially suggest T-Rex relied more on scent than sight, again supporting the scavenger hypothesis. However, modern forensic analysis has utterly demolished the purely scavenger hypothesis, revealing it as deeply flawed, much like a poorly constructed piece of IKEA furniture. The evidence supporting the hunter role is overwhelming. We've already mentioned the Edmontosaurus tail with the embedded tooth and the Triceratops hip with the healed bite marks. These are direct forensic proof of T-Rex engaging living mobile prey. Furthermore, the sensory evidence has been re-evaluated. While T-Rex did have an incredible sense of smell, useful for both hunting and scavenging, subsequent research demonstrated that its eyes, though small proportionally, were actually forward-facing, providing superb binocular vision. This overlap in vision provided excellent depth perception, a critical requirement for an active predator that needs to judge distance accurately for a precise killing strike. They weren't just looking at the world, they were locking onto targets. Moreover, a 2023 study by researchers at the Royal Tyrrell Museum of Paleontology in Alberta focused on the deep muscle attachments in the lower legs and tail. They concluded that T-Rex possessed gigantic tail muscles, the cauda longus, that acted as power boosters, capable of generating incredibly fast, short bursts of acceleration. It wasn't built for a marathon, but for a terrifying 100-meter dash designed to ambush and overpower. The final verdict, according to the overwhelming weight of evidence, is that T-Rex was an obligate apex predator. What does that mean? It means it needed meat, and lots of it. If a carcass was available, a massive, recently deceased Triceratops or Edmontosaurus, the T-Rex, being the biggest bully on the block, would absolutely claim it. Why risk injury chasing a healthy animal if free calories are available? However, if the environment was lean, or if it encountered vulnerable prey, its physiology and weaponry were perfectly optimized to hunt, kill, and process large vertebrates. It was the ultimate, non-discriminatory meat processing machine of the late Cretaceous. And speaking of processing energy efficiently, let's take a brief detour from our 66-million-year-old crime scene. If you're anything like me, running a cold case investigation across multiple geological strata requires serious fuel. And that's where my fictional sponsor comes in. This investigation has been powered by Paleo Fuel Coffee. Look, when you're studying bones that have been in the dirt since the KPG Boundary event, you need something stronger than your average brew. Paleo Fuel is triple roasted using volcanic soil, maybe, and delivers a jolt so intense you'll swear you just dodged a charging Triceratops. Stop drinking coffee that tastes like swamp water. Get the fuel that makes you feel like an apex predator. If you're a paleontologist, a student, or just a sleep-deprived short king trying to make it through the week, check out Paleo Fuel Coffee. Now let's get back to the good stuff, because the T-Rex had some dark secrets we haven't uncovered yet. Our forensic file has established T-Rex as a powerful hunter, a scarred brawler, and the undisputed master of its domain. But the investigation into bite marks reveals the most disturbing, final chapter of its behavioral profile. T-Rex was a cannibal. Evidence for this grim practice comes from several isolated finds across the Hell Creek Formation. Specifically, long bones, such as humerus and metatarsals, of T. Rex individuals that display deep V-shaped gouges consistent only with the teeth of another T-Rex. In a landmark paper published in 2010, Nick Longrich and his team examined these specific bone marks. They noted that the deep scoring and subsequent drag marks showed the clear pattern of a massive tyrannosaur processing the flesh of another tyrannosaur. These marks were distinct from those left by crocodiles or other smaller scavengers of the time. Crucially, the location of the bite mark suggests they occurred post-mortem, or perhaps during the final stages of a fight. They are typically found on the meatier parts of the limbs where large muscle masses attach. This suggests the second T-Rex wasn't trying to fight or kill the first one at that moment. It was trying to eat it. What does this tell the detective? It confirms extreme resource scarcity and opportunity. In the volatile environment of the late Cretaceous, especially as the climate began shifting and resource availability potentially fluctuated, T-Rex was utterly dominant. But being dominant means nothing if you're starving. If a massive T-Rex corpse presented itself, whether the individual died of disease, old age, or was killed in intraspecific combat, it represented a massive calorific prize. No other creature in the environment could effectively break down those tough T-Rex bones or ward off the giant claiming the meal. Cannibalism, though repulsive to us, is a highly effective, if desperate, evolutionary strategy when resources are extremely limited, and you are the only one capable of accessing that specific type of roadkill. It suggests a high-density population of apex predators combined with intense competition. The life of a T-Rex was defined by eating, or being eaten by, something just as large and unforgiving. It's a vicious cycle of brutal survival where every advantage is exploited, even if that advantage is the unfortunate demise of your neighbor. This forensic detail adds another layer of bizarre, terrifying realism to the creature. It wasn't just killing Triceratops, it was turning on its own kind, leaving its final grisly clues in the scattered remains of its peers. The T-Rex skull wasn't just a powerful weapon, it was the ultimate evidence lever, signing off on every action it took, lethal or otherwise. The most profound lesson we learn from our T-Rex detective case is that no creature, no matter how intimidating or huge, exists outside the rules of ecology and physics. Its body is the permanent record of its existence. When paleontologists examine these bones, using everything from isotope analysis, checking for what minerals the dinosaur consumed, telling us about its diet and environment, to high-resolution microscopy on thin bone slices, revealing growth rates and age, they are not just piecing together skeletons. They are reconstructing a life history of violence, pain, healing, and absolute dominance. The T-Rex, this absolute unit of the Cretaceous, left behind a legacy of scars, breaks, and deeply embedded teeth that provide a far richer, more detailed biography than the simplistic monster movie narrative ever could. We see the aggression mirrored in modern crocodilians, the opportunistic scavenging mirrored in bears, and the intense, bloody, intraspecific combat mirrored in the deep-sea fights of sperm whales or the territorial wars of bull elephants. The note-ropes of the modern era and the massive marine predators all follow the same playbook. Survival means carrying your scars and leveraging every biological advantage you possess. T-Rex was the culmination of 150 million years of dinosaurian evolution, a creature so specialized for killing and surviving that its body was literally built to leave forensic evidence that would outlast the extinction event itself. It was the ultimate apex predator, leaving clues in the Hell Creek dirt that allow us, 66 million years later, to solve the cold case of the Tyrant King. Thanks for watching, and until next time on The Lost World.